This is The Right Approach. I am JW Judge, and with me is my co host, Barbara Hinske. This is a podcast for writers to learn more about the craft and business of writing as we explore a new topic every week. This week, it's the two of us, and we're going to talk about showing up to do your creative work, even when you're not seeing immediate results. And a corollary topic is inflection points and how that sticking with it and having what my football coach called stick-to-itiveness can lead to those inflection points and those points of change where things you start to see different results. But before we get into that topic, it's been a few weeks since we have talked about what we've got going on. I saw this week that you have released the cover for your ninth Rosemont book and set it for pre-order. And I really like this cover with the pups on it. Um, you know, those early covers in this series are very like warm and homey. And this one with a crib and dogs, it gives it a fresh, different feel, and I like it.
Thank you so much. It is a little bit, at 9 books in a series, you've got to have some progression in people's lives. And in the eighth book is kind of like a little one-off novella, taking a path of one of the characters. But the seventh book in the series ends with a woman going into labor. And unfortunately, I left her in labor for 2.5 years. Shame on me. But
That's
now
a
she's
really
having,
long gestation period.
yeah, it is. It's awful. I should be shot for that. So, yeah, the ninth book is coming out, uh, launches July 6th. And then my fourth Emily book came out April 6th and it's been a good, solid launch. I'm not a person who has a launch that has a huge, big first day or first week. I'm kind of a decent launch and then slow and steady build, which is what has happened. So I'm happy with that. And I'm hoping to get line edits back by the weekend for my third Paws and Pastries book, and then get it to the copy or get it to the proofreader by the end of next week. So that's kind of what's going on in the author world. And I know you've been streaming along on this new book of yours. So tell us about that. I'm so proud of you.
Well, I will, but I want to follow up on, you're, 4 books into the Emily series, 9 books into Rosemont. And so my understanding, not having written that many books into a series, is you're not looking for a huge splash necessarily with when you're that deep into a series. You want
Right.
steady progression. You want to
Right.
continue to bring readers to those first books and have them push on through. And so it is about staying the course in that steadiness and
Yes.
continuing to draw eyes to it, and especially where they're serialized like yours, and you need to know what happened before. It's not going to be a huge day necessarily.
Right. Right. I think that's exactly right. And the idea of kind of keeping the characters fresh so that you're not just stamping out a new book with the same old plot arc. Um, I know there are some very successful authors that do that, but that's just not my path. That's not what I want to do.
No, I agree, and I would have difficulty doing that as well. That would get really stale for me. I mean,
Yeah.
even if it's commercially successful, I would
Yeah.
have a hard time executing that over and over.
Yeah. It's no fun.
All right. As for me, I am a, in my nearly halfway done with my fifth novel, or at least halfway done with the first draft. Um,
Wow.
and
Wow. When did you start writing it?
January 1st.
That's
And
amazing.
so it's about 3.5 months.
Wow.
February, I think I got somewhere between 4 and 5,000 words in February. It was significantly slower than either January or March. There was a lot going on. Um, April so far has been slower. in the writing than March. Um, and I had, like, last week, I had a lot of creative energy and
Mhm.
ideas,
Yeah.
but they were not novel writing creativity. I mean, it was other stuff. It was stuff for the podcast. I created, I had an idea for some videos for my personal YouTube channel, not the podcast, to release some short videos about the backstories about the novels that I've written.
It's great.
Just because I find it so interesting to learn about, where story ideas came from, or the past that man, I'm struggling, the paths that authors took to create the book, or how it changed. So um, I think I'm going to do that for each of the books that are out. Um, so I did recorded one of those last week. It was only 5 or 6 minutes long,
Yeah.
um, and so there was a lot of creative energy. It just wasn't writing energy,
Yeah.
and so April's been thrown off a little bit, but the chapter I'm writing now will get us to the midway point of the novel. I have a rough idea of how the second half of Act Two will go. I know the major things that have to happen. And then I already have a chapter by chapter outline and like little notes section about what will happen in the third act. Like, once I get to the third act, it's just going to like really go. But
Yeah.
the second act is what I'm sorry, the second half of the second act is, it's not going to be a slog because there's a lot that has to happen.
Mhm.
And I think it's going to be interesting. I just don't know the specifics of it yet, like I do that third act.
Yeah. That's fun to have the ending in mind so that when you get there, it's a little like coloring between the lines. And that's fun. It's
Yeah.
still creative to write that, but it's more fun.
And that ending keeps changing a little bit, not significantly. Like, for example, I am writing it from a first person perspective, point of view, in past tense. And I have, you know, been waffling on, or for a while, I waffled on, should I write it in present tense or past tense? Because I think writing it in present tense adds more immediacy and uncertainty. Because if it's in past tense, that the main character survives long enough to tell the story. If it's in
Right.
first person,
Do we know
um,
who the narrator is?
yeah, we
Okay.
know who the narrator is. And so first person, like, you're pretty sure they're going to survive because they're the one telling the story.
Right.
I mean, first person present tense, but it adds more uncertainty. And so what I thought about, I think this past week, maybe over the weekend, was, what if we get, I guess most of the way probably through the third act, and that's where the story catches up to the present. And from that point on, as we get to the end, it's present tense, and the author tells you, like, okay, like, here's where we are now, and it's present tense from that point on. I don't know if that'll work or not. I'm going to
That's an
explore it.
exciting thing. I mean, yeah, all that stuff is technically challenging to write. It's hard to pull that off. And especially because you've got such a big cast of characters and
Well, it's
yeah,
dwindling down for sure.
for sure.
uh
But yeah, you've had a lot to wrangle.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on that. I i still hope to finish by the end of June. I know that only leaves me 2.5 months with half of it left to write, but I don't have any deadlines. If it carries on further than that, then that's okay. That's all
Yeah.
right. But that's still the goal.
Well,
We'll see.
that is an admirable goal. Writing those murder mysteries are harder. I know that some people pants them. I don't know how. It a small taste of that early on in my writing career when I wrote my little novella, The Night Train, which was I coined it as a Facebook bedtime story. I was trying to build my Facebook account, and I posted a picture, great picture of this red train at night at dusk going through the Alps, snow covered, big trestle bridge, right? And I typed in like 3 lines of a murder mystery and posted it. And I had been getting like 13 likes or whatever on a post, and I had like 6,100. I'm like, oh. So then the next day I type, okay, stay tuned. It was a Thursday, Monday through Thursday every week, and for a next installment of The Night Train, a Facebook bedtime story. Proud of myself. And then I'm thinking, oh, what have I done? I haven't written anything, and I can't just pants this. So that resulted in a weekend of, no shower, no hair, no, in my pajamas, just at the keyboard, and I got it done over the weekend. And it's been really successful, which I guess just is a little reminder to sometimes you do have to go with your intuition. But yeah, writing murder mysteries is hard.
Yeah. Well, for example, you know, we have just had like the second disappearance slash death. And, the characters are all suspicious of each other and trying to figure out what's going on. And I am not, there are some things that I'm super organized about and other things that I'm not. And so I'm going to have to go back and figure out where everybody was and like have a chart of where everybody
Oh,
was and what they were doing so that I don't get myself jammed up, which is not something I've had to do before. And I think I'm going to have to do that for, there's going to be several more of these. And I've got to figure out where I know who's doing it. So I'm not in that Agatha Christie situation of writing it without knowing who's doing it, which I have no idea how she pulled that off.
yeah.
Um, but so I know who's doing it and I know where they are. I know where my protagonist is and the people that they're immediately interacting with. But everybody else, I've got to keep up with that or I'm going to get in trouble.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. That's such fun stuff to think about for sure. And I want to give myself, if anybody listening would like to check out The Night Train, you can get it. Sign up for my newsletter at www.barbarahinske.com, and it'll arrive in your inbox every few days. And it's just 300 to 500 words. And it was fun. I wondered if this thing had any reach. And I went to my primary care doctor with a cold, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I love your Night Train thing." He said, "I don't have time to read novels, but I really like that." And I thought, I didn't have any idea that he was signed up to get that. So that's where that is.
Oh, that's awesome to get that
Yes.
kind of just unexpected, positive reinforcement there.
Yeah, it is very fun.
All right. What I like about today's topic, about showing up to do the creative work, even when we're not seeing immediate results, is that you and I are on such very different ends of this continuum
Mhm.
of you and so many of the people that we talk to. Like this episode will come out after we've just had our conversation with Alessandra Torre.
Oh,
Um, and a few episodes ago we talked to Robert Bailey and Robert Dugoni, and so you and all of these people have had such significant commercial success. Um, as we're sitting here, we're a little over 2 weeks away, or a little less than 2 weeks away from my fourth novel coming out. Um, and
huge.
I've sold some copies. I was trying to figure it out the other day for Vulcan Rising, which came out, I don't even remember, June of 2021. Um, between there was a giveaway on Kobo where it was free.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think we've reached 1,000 yet, but it's more than 500. So, there have been sales. It's fine, but it hasn't been like a huge commercial success by any means. So we're on very different ends of this, where I am still waiting for um, that commercial inflection point to show up where things are significantly different. So Talk to me about writing when you started writing, and when there started to be commercial success that you were like, this is different than what came before it.
Well, and I think with your books, it hasn't happened yet, but it will because you are such a fine writer. You're a fine writer, and I think you will, and an interesting writer in it. Yeah. So this will happen for you. I think my first commercial success was my first book was Coming to Rosemont, published December 2012. I was lucky enough to get selected for a book. I had just a handful of reviews from friends and family members who picked it up, and they kind of liked it. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I thought it would be a one book thing. But then I thought, well, I should write a sequel. But I qualified for a BookBub feature deal in July 4th, 2014. And I thought, at the time it was $300. And I thought, oh my God, am I going to lose my money? And I thought, well, what difference does it make? $300 isn't going to kill me. My goal was to make that money back. And so I'm busy on July 4th, and I check in the morning that, yeah, the BookBub email went out, and then I'm busy on my day. And at the end of the day, I come and look to see, well, if I had any sales. I was number 2 in the entire Amazon store, which was higher than James Patterson and Stephen King. And I had sold 10,000 copies that day.
Did you do a screenshot, hopefully?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. In fact, I've got a little frame in my office with that. Because I'm like, holy, it was number 1 in a whole bunch of big, long list of subcategories, but number 2 in the entire Kindle store. So I guess July 4th just had a lot of women's fiction readers who had some time to download something to read. And that BookBub ad did it for me. And then BookBub they have a blog, and I was on their BookBub bestseller list. And then I was number 1 in Family Sagas. And so that just kept building. And it certainly wasn't a constant success. I've had a couple of other BookBub feature deals for that book since then, but I haven't had one in years. It wasn't the magic bullet, but it did launch my career. And then as we talk, I've got a couple of other books that I look at it as my own personal inflection points that at the time were just either throwaways or were kind of big disappointments. So the lesson on that was you never know where your good is going to come from. So keep swinging at the pitches.
So I have 2 different directions I want to go, and so I want to make sure that I don't forget them. First, the year and a half in between the release of the first Rosemont book and the BookBub deal, what were you writing another book at that point? What were you doing in that year and a half?
So in that year and a half, I started writing the second book in the series, and I was trying to grow my social media and learn Facebook ads and learn all that stuff. And so I did the Night Train Facebook bedtime story. That was so successful to help me build my author page. I did 2 other stories, and I took the advice to create a Facebook community page that I would own with an interest that would be attractive to my readers. And then I could grow that page. It's easier to grow that page than just your author page where you're just saying, hey, I write this stuff, blah, blah. Then I could post things on that community page that would draw people to my author page. That worked beautifully. I chose Downton Abbey fans. It was the second season of Downton Abbey, and it was such a huge success. And those people were interested in my books. So that Downton Abbey fans page was so much fun. Now it's got, I think, 250,000 people like it. And, I'm kind of running recycled content for the most part on that. And I'll get 750,000, page view or whatever views on it. And then it grew my author page to about 40,000. So that was successful. I also became the Downton Abbey reviewer for cultbox.uk.co, which is kind of like the Entertainment Tonight. Their reviewer was seriously injured in a car accident on a Wednesday. The review had to go up on Thursday. they found me on this Facebook page and sent me the links, and I stayed up all night that first night watching the next episode, reviewing it. I did that until the show concluded. I've been on British TV as and interviewed as some sort of an expert. I mean, I'm not, but it's so that again, it's just one of those crazy things. You just decide, okay, well, I'm going to give this a shot, and then look where it goes. How much fun is that?
Well, I loved Downton Abbey.
Oh,
Um,
good. I'm glad you didn't say what.
no, I watched every episode.
Right.
I watched the movie that came out last year,
Yeah.
whenever it was. Um, it's just like I mean, tension, not in the same way. It's relationship tension all the way through.
Yes.
You have social class tension, the stakes for the family, particularly, you know, Lord Crawley, about whether he is going to be willing to change with the times, and his character development. Like, the whole thing was just so engaging. I loved everything about that show.
Yeah. It was just fabulous. I think we're all just in mourning that they discontinued it, but at least they're doing the movies.
Yeah.
And for me personally, it's just brought so many rich things into my life. Um, and sometimes when those actors do something else, they'll contact me and I'll do a Facebook Live on the Downton Abbey page. So I'm still kind of rubbing shoulders with some of those people. It's been very fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So you mentioned that you also had a couple of books that um, were personal inflection points. I don't know if you're comfortable talking about that, but if you are, I'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, it's kind of an encouraging thing. So my Christmas novella, The Christmas Club, which was made into a Hallmark movie in 2019 and was their most successful movie in 2019. Yay. But at any rate, I wrote that novella to contribute to an anthology of Christmas books that a bunch of other women's fiction authors were going to do. Only guess who was the only person who wrote the book? Me. Nobody else got it done. And then they're all like, okay, well, maybe for next year. And I thought, no, no, next year. If you didn't do it this year when you committed you were going to do it, you probably aren't going to do it next year. So I just thought, well, I've got this little 110-page book and I liked it. So I put it up on Amazon. And then I kept getting reviews saying, oh, this would be a great Hallmark movie. And so I started I live in Phoenix, Arizona, nowhere near any of the Hallmark stuff. But I kept asking people, do you know anybody at the Hallmark Channel? And somebody said, my neighbor produces The Good Witch, which is their most successful franchise. Do you want me to give them the book? Yeah. Within 3 weeks of that, I was in talks. So I think I published it in 2016. You know, everybody always talks about, oh, movies are such a long thing. It never happens, blah, blah. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest took 20 years. All right, well, so it did. But within 3 years, my book was on the screen. So it can happen. And it was just something I thought was going to be a disaster. And then my little novella, I should only write novellas as I'm saying all this. Paws and Pastries. I wrote that in the first 3 weeks of January 2021. I was going to have eye surgery on the 21st of January, so I needed to get something done before then. And I was so traumatized by COVID and political stuff and everything. I just went to my little happy place and published it and didn't do much until the next year. It was part of an anthology that landed me on the USA Today bestseller list. And now that little novella is just a real good little seller. So you just don't know. And I was drawn to both of those projects, really was excited to write them. And it wasn't an instant success, but boy, they were successes.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it was finishing that first novel. And I talked last episode about, no, it wasn't last episode. It was on a different podcast that I'm going to be on just as a guest. I talked about
What
I
podcast
have,
is that so we can look for it? What podcast?
it's called The War of Art and Law, and somebody
Okay.
is a lawyer who's doing it. Of there's a conflict between able to do all these things that we want to do creatively.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and so for me, I had started and stopped over the course of a couple of years two different novels that I realized during the writing of them, I don't know enough about storytelling in this format to do this well. And so that had just been a couple of years of starts and stops of something that I had always wanted to do. And throughout that time, listening to podcasts about the craft of writing, I was still doing a lot of nonfiction writing, reading
Yeah,
books
let's let's
about,
let's let's pause on that because you're a big deal lawyer author. So tell us about that.
well, I wouldn't, I, since 2016, started writing a law blog. And ultimately, that turned into, over the course of a few years, three nonfiction books about law practice. And that
Yeah,
led
you're an
into,
expert. Yeah.
well,
It's too
and
modern.
so,
I'm saying it. It's true.
okay, fair enough. And so, I, between writing every day for work and writing some nonfiction books, the the ability to write and put words on a page was not problematic. It was storytelling and learning how to write a novel. So my way of figuring all of that out is by consuming lots of information. And I did that in the form of podcast and reading books about the craft of writing. And so, after fits of starts and stops in August, and I think I've talked about this here. In August, at the end of August of 2020, I started writing Vulcan Rising, which became my first novel, and finished it in 3.5 months. And I haven't written anything else that quickly. Um, but, I had put in all of that work for several years of projects that hadn't worked out, and learning and practicing. And when that one hit, like it hit hard, and I was able to get it done. And so for me, that has certainly been an inflection point. It hasn't been a huge financial boon,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
showed late yet. But it proved to me that I am capable of doing this. The next thing was showing it to people, and with that fear of rejection, so that they
Yeah.
could tell me that either this is hot garbage and you should never touch a keyboard again, or uh, like this is good, or something in the middle. And so, um, that was the next step. But this showed me that I could do it. And then people that I trust, who I didn't have close personal relationships, but who I trusted because I was acquainted with, I knew that I could show it to them and they would give me honest feedback and not just be, you can't show it to your mom and expect her to give you
Right.
like the hard truth. And so I showed it to people who I have known through internet groups over the years. So they don't have to look me in the face. They can send me a message and be like, hey, this is, they would say it nicely, but if it were terrible, they would, they would tell me.
Hell, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that gave me the confidence of knowing I could do it. Now, I think most writers waffle between like um, an overabundance of confidence, and then on the
Mhm.
other end of the spectrum is crippling self-doubt. And sometimes
Yeah.
we're on one end of that, and other times the pendulum swings the other way. And so I certainly go back and forth between that. But that was a big moment for me. Um, and I think that this book that I'm currently writing, it's a mystery novel, and it's different, significantly different from the first four fantasy novels. Um, and so we'll see. I mean, it has the opportunity to be another one of those points. Um, but there have been other things along the way, starting this podcast and having the opportunity to do this with you, and to talk to all of these authors and to people in the
Yeah,
publishing community has certainly been another one of those points with me to establish that
me
community
too. Yeah,
of authors, that I wouldn't otherwise have. And
yeah,
so, that's building relationships that I hope to maintain and build off of for a long time. But
yeah.
honestly, it also has some negative unintended consequences of the problem with talking with so many people who are so good at their craft and also so good at selling books is that when I'm not doing that, you talk to these people and it can feel like, Barbara, it can feel like you are the norm, or, like the authors that have so much commercial success is the norm, but that isn't the norm. That's the exception. And so that can be something that I have to contend with too, of knowing that, you know, I haven't gotten there yet. I hope to. It may not ever turn out to be that much financial success, but it doesn't need to. I mean, it'd be great, but it doesn't have to. I'm going to keep doing it regardless.
I think you're going to have great financial success with the book you're writing now. I'll go on public record to say I think this is going to be a breakout. It's a great premise and it's such a wide market. We all suffer from that comparison. I mean, I look at these writers who write a book a month. No, there's no way I can do that or want to do that, but they're selling like crazy and they're doing all this stuff. Just anybody who's in the author community knows that all these comparisons to other people can sap the life out of you. It's just not healthy for you.
Yeah, and that's why I have to. I'm a very ambitious, internally driven person.
Sure.
Um, and I have to look at myself and check myself and realize I'm doing what I can do right now.
Yeah.
Um, and that has to be okay, because
Yeah.
I don't have to pay the bills with this. I'm not relying
Yeah.
on it to do that. Um, it's not intended to do that. And so I'm doing the most that I can do right now. And the results are going to be what they are. I'm going to put my best foot forward and spend the limited amount of time that I have doing it. And, we led off with saying we're going to talk about showing up to do the creative work. And that's what I have determined to do. And, so that's what I've been doing. First, it was with nonfiction. Since the fall of 2020, it's been mostly with fiction, of showing up every day, almost every day, to do that
Mhm.
creative work. Because if you don't, then you don't give yourself the opportunity to succeed.
Yeah. I mean, you've been so diligent about this for somebody with a very high level full-time law practice, busy law practice, and then a young family, and you do home remodeling and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, you're definitely not a slacker, that's for sure.
So I don't want to make it sound easy to show up every day to do the work, because it's not. There's plenty of days that it doesn't feel like doing it. So, I don't know, when you're going through a period of, you know, you're just not feeling it, or,
Mm.
the results aren't there, project didn't pan out like you wanted to. What keeps you coming back to the table?
I guess I am just so pig-headed and stubborn. And what else would I do with my time? I am an optimist, so I think, okay, well, that didn't work out, but something else will. And I think part of that is just the discipline of being a lawyer and doing daily writing or marketing or whatever. But I do give myself a day off a week. I still look at my email and stuff, but I'll take a day off a week just to refresh a little bit. And that probably isn't enough. I'm soon going to be taking a 12-day vacation where I won't be doing any of this stuff, although I kind of want to think about a murder mystery that I could plot, come home with a plot so I can write off my trip. But that's maybe will happen, maybe won't. How do you keep yourself engaged? Do you just not think about it and just do it?
Yeah, pretty much. I think I have to attribute it to stubbornness too. I think it's funny what you
Yeah.
said about writing off your trip though, because um, every time, like we've gone on a couple of weekend trips over the last couple of years, and I keep a word count log every day. And so,
Wow.
including on those days, I make sure that I write on those days that we're on trips for that express purpose of I did work while I was gone, and therefore this is a writing retreat. Um, and so, yeah,
Good.
tax reasons. Yeah, I'm with you.
Why not?
Um,
Why not? I will do that actually.
that way,
You know,
like I keep that. I've been doing that word count
I
log since 2019, and
it's
I
a
do
great
it
idea.
there, and so there's no questioning. Like this happened on these days, and we were in this location, and so you know they go together.
Okay. Yeah, I will do that. That's a great idea.
Um, I don't even remember what the question. Oh, even when I'm frustrated, even when things are not like encouraging, what keeps me going? And it's that ambition of what I want. I told my wife earlier in the year, like, here are the things that I want to come out of writing. Like, if we're talking just finances, these are my goals. And her eyes got a little big. And like, look, I'm not saying I think it's likely to happen, but this is what's driving this bus. But it's
Yeah.
really when I it is much more internally motivated than any external factors. Like external factors are outside of my control.
Yeah.
But the internal motivation of I want to do these things. I enjoy writing when I don't have a creative outlet. It affects me and my
Mhm.
demeanor and my mood and attitude. And so even though writing and these other, podcasting are work and they occupy time,
Mhm.
they are
Yeah.
also immensely gratifying to me,
Yeah.
and I am
I
in a
love it.
better place for having put in that work. And so, it's a business, but also it's it doesn't feel like work all the time. My brain is still tired afterwards, but it's different
Mhm.
than other forms of work. So, yeah, I think I just have to attribute it to just honoriness.
Orneriness is a good quality.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we are not always super good about having a call to action at the end. Like by super good, I mean we almost never do it at the end. So I want to make sure we do it before we leave today. That if you are listening to this podcast on an app or watching it on YouTube, uh, please leave a like or a rating, a comment, because those tell the algorithms that this is a podcast that is worth listening to or watching, and it causes them to share it to others when those things are happening. So if you would like, rate, review, something like that, just so other listeners or watchers too will know that it's worth your time, we would really greatly appreciate it. And I hope you found our conversation today useful.
Yeah.